Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Latched Mama podcast. Melissa here. It is a rainy, cold January day in Richmond, Virginia, which is sometimes what happens all of January in Richmond, Virginia. And today we're going to talk about a really, really great topic. We're going to talk about something called COVID. Just kidding. No, but seriously, Lindy's here and we are going to chat a little bit about the impacts that COVID is still having on moms everywhere. So join us. You're listening to Latched Mama Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Wirt, busy mom of 6 and owner of LatchedMama.com. Join us each week as we talk about pregnancy, breastfeeding, postpartum, and all things motherhood. How are you?
Good.
That was a very, very.
I am good.
A good.
I am good today.
You good?
Yeah.
You're through the worst of it, I feel like.
I think we're in the clear.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really, really strong, optimistic response to that question.
Yes, but we're like day 5 after the last one, and everybody feels good. And I think we're okay. I feel confident saying that, but I don't know. Watch somebody take me down next week.
I saw something on Twitter yesterday that said something crazy, like 40% of the population has had Omicron at this point.
Yeah.
Guys, we know that this isn't an incredibly safe topic for us to talk on simply because there are so many thoughts on it. We posted an engagement thing on Facebook and Instagram this week. I was just messing around at home. I have homeschooled kids. We like to do some science stuff sometimes, and we pulled out antibody test, which like the number one question on Facebook and Instagram was where you got those or where we got them. And it's so funny because right now we have to order rapid tests for the office through like a medical distribution company. It's the only way we can get enough of them. We have rapid tests here in the office for families who work for us who don't have them. And then we also take them as kind of a company or as a team anytime we get a shipment in, because people can't stay 6 feet apart from one another when we're working on a shipment like that. So anyways, we have to buy rapid tests. We buy them at $21 a test now, if anybody thinks that is not crazy. But anyways, I accidentally ordered a box of antibody tests instead of the rapid antigen test. So anyways, we had a whole bunch at home and we started playing with them. And I tested my breast milk, and we trusted orange juice and Coke and water. And we just kind of played around with the kids and did a control. And, my husband had been vaccinated with Johnson & Johnson. I had Pfizer. We just kind of were looking at antibodies. And, we have a nanny that works for us who has had COVID twice, who hasn't been vaccinated, and she breastfeeds as well. So we wanted to look at antibodies there. Like literally, we just nerded out as a family, which is really, really fun and cool to do sometimes, and teaching them about science. But needless to say, I thought it was really cool because, nothing else tested positive for antibodies other than the blood of the people who'd been vaccinated or had the natural exposure to it, and breast milk. So I thought it was cool. So I posted a picture of the positive test that showed that the breast milk had antibodies. And it was probably one of the longest days I've had as like a business / like social media owner in a really, really long time, because it's a super polarizing topic. But I had such good intentions with the post. The intentions were to give moms everywhere just a little bit of reassurance that although we can't do a whole lot right now to protect ourselves and our families, and even what we do decide to do is polarizing, it is kind of neat to see those breast milk antibodies. So that led me to reading all of those comments and saying, what more can we do? Like, can we go do something where really only people can leave comments about how much they hate us and what we're saying, like on social media somewhere, maybe that don't need to be moderated by anyone just because it was such an exhausting process. But honestly, where I struggle right now, and I will promise you I'll let you talk in a second.
You're fine.
Where I struggle right now, 2 years into this pandemic, is the fact that, I think news cycles happen. And I don't know too much about them. I took some classes in college on them. But, things get trendy for the news to talk about. And I feel like at the very beginning of the pandemic, and slowly as we ended that first stage before the vaccines came out, everybody was talking about the impact it had on moms. Everybody was talking about how many moms had left the workforce and how they were teaching their kids at home and still having to work, and how employers needed like flexible schedules. Like I literally was doing media interviews constantly because we have such a flexible work environment here. Either I did them terribly and nobody reaches out anymore, or people just don't want to talk about it anymore.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. I think it is just as much of an issue now in January 2022 as it was at the beginning and middle of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
But when you stop talking about it, you stop connecting people, you stop building that community around the idea that, hey, I'm not alone in this. Hey, this is hard and I can recognize it's hard. And I think I just wanted to get together today, not to talk about like vaccine, not vaccine, or antibodies, not antibodies, or mask or not mask, like all the crap that is in the news cycles. And I just want to like have a really real moment about how this is really, really hard for moms right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you were talking about not necessarily today or anything, but just being a small business right now and navigating it to where it's still all there, but the expectations on you feel or are different.
Absolutely.
And then I think that's the same. So you take these moms, you know, moms at home or wherever, working moms, any mom, and all of these quarantines, restrictions, isolations, they're still here.
Absolutely.
They really haven't changed a whole lot, but the normal life is expected to continue. So I feel like back then there was that extra grace. Either offices were like, no, you're completely, you know, work at home, or there was just do what you can kind of vibe, and it's just not, it's not there.
It's
right
almost
now.
like, hey, you're not going to die from it anymore, but I still expect you to be a mom and an employee and, you know, keep your SHIT together, because apparently it's not going to really kill you necessarily anymore. And I feel like that is such a terrible, terrible place to get, because what's happening is we're still having daycare centers close. We're still having close contacts after a positive case have to stay at home from public school, from daycares. And then you have to somehow navigate that as a human being, whether it's a father or a mother, and figure out how you're going to cover childcare and how you're also going to get your job done. And you really, really hope that you have a flexible boss that, I don't know, 2 years into this, like I'm still super flexible, but we also know that Latched Mama is an anomaly in the business world in the sense that everybody gets to be a mom first. And no matter how hard this gets to be, it's still going to be that way. I'd rather go down making sure people, you know, get to be themselves than, you know, any other way. But I don't know. It's just, it's hard for me because there is so much mental energy as well as physical energy at this point to try and keep families moving forward. And I think it needs to be talked about. Do you want to give us a little bit of an insight of just what you had to navigate with 6 kids and public school, and just some of like the extra stuff that comes with navigating COVID right now?
Yeah, I look back at like the beginning, and I was trying to remember back to when it happened. I feel like it was a Wednesday, Thursday, and there was all the talk. I mean, you knew things were going on, but it's like, are they going to be back in school Monday? Like, it was like that first taste of like your life can change at any moment. Like my phone could call right now and I will have whoever at home for whatever days.
Which I feel like is a pretty typical thing as a parent. Like at any point, especially as you have 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 kids or whatever, and you have a job, like your phone can ring at any minute and you can go. But this is like kind of like you're waiting for the boulder to catch up with you. It's like Indiana Jones, and like you're running and you're running as fast as you can, and the boulder's chasing you. And like, what can you do? You can give them vitamins in the morning. You can wash your hands. You can wear masks if you're into that. Like,
but even so, as a parent, I mean, you think about the questions that we hear on After Hours or just motherhood in general. What change does to us, you know, change with an infant. They're not napping anymore. Like, oh my gosh, like 100%. This is going to be forever. Like, what do I do? And it's completely real. And honestly, I had that with 4, 5, and 6 children. It is very hard to be like, it's all good. Like, we're going to be okay. Like, it's hard to navigate that anxiety and,
Yep.
when that mom brain's turned on, all the directions that it tries to go. But yeah, I just remember back to that time, and no, they didn't go back, and they were supposed to try to do this online work, which I gave them a whole lot of grace.
This was like back in 2020.
This was like over a year ago. Yeah, 2 years ago.
Yeah. Literally, it's all a blur. And it's okay if it's a blur to you too, because it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that led in, at least for our journey, knowing that they were going to be virtual and knowing that I had 4 children. Well, I already had one in middle school that was on a Chromebook, and he'd already turned that Chromebook in 4 different times for new ones to navigate the issues. Fixed very quickly or whatever, but just knowing that the government issued Chromebooks are a bit of a pain to sometimes work with. So then I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to have 4 elementary kids and 1 middle schooler. Wasn't too worried about him navigating on and off calls for the duration of the school day. And so in the end, we decided to do our own thing, and we'd been down the homeschooling route before, so I really wasn't too concerned about it. And I mean, that was the best move for us that year. We really, it was a hard year.
But
I was working, I did have help, so I can't, it's not like I was doing all of this, but that did help us a little bit not have to deal with some of these other tricky things, trying to get on these Chromebooks and trying to learn at home. And
so now they're back in school.
Yeah.
They've
so this
been
year
in and
they are
out.
back.
In our area, and I don't know if this is the way it is in the rest of the country. What is it? So if you're not vaccinated and you're in school and you've had exposure, I mean, it's changed like 5 times.
Yeah.
I think at the beginning when it started, you were out for 10 days after the exposure, or 7 days after the exposure?
Yeah, you were
you could
out.
test.
Your exposure's day 0. Next day is day 1. You can test day 5. If it's
And,
negative, you can return on day 8.
And what's for dinner, and who needs checkups,
Yeah.
and who has sports practice, and can the kid go to sports practice that's outside if they've been exposed?
Yeah.
Or here's this one, can employees come to work who have a kid at home who has been exposed? Does that mean if they're asymptomatic and you can't find a test, or they're not testing positive yet on a thing, can they come to work?
Yeah.
And
My brain's tired just thinking of it.
It is absolutely exhausting. So if you're tired, it's okay. And I think we all need to admit that it's okay to be tired. And I think that that's what happens when it falls out of the news cycles, and when it falls out of anybody giving attention to it, you start to feel like you're the only one, and you start to feel like there's something wrong with you. And why should this be hard? Because nobody's talking about it being hard. We brought it up in an after hours. For those of you who don't know, we go live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. on the Latched Facebook page. But Lindi and I were talking about COVID one night because it was exhausting. It was right when school started after the holidays, and it was scary. And I think we were both scared about life starting back up again. And there were some people who enjoyed us talking about it, but the majority of people told us that they didn't want to hear about it and they wanted to move on to the next cycle, which I think is important, and I agree. But I also think by ignoring things, you stop building that community, and you stop building the fact that it's okay to feel the way that we feel. I know here, one of the big issues that we're having is it's really hard to find tests. So you then have to navigate mentally, hey, my kid has this. Do I test them? Do I send them to school because it's really not a big deal? Not saying COVID's not a big deal, but hey, they had a stomachache after they ate 4 pieces of pizza. What do I do? Or hey, they have a scratchy throat, but the heat was on really high last night. Is it just dry air? Do I keep them home from school because it could be COVID, but I don't have a test because I used my last test the last time somebody said that they didn't feel well, which kids say, I feel like, all the time, especially kids who have been living for the past 2 years in a pandemic, who also probably have anxiety and are scared of everything too.
Yep. Sometimes I have my brain just goes to mush, and maybe I can connect with those people who are I can't, I don't want to hear about it anymore. It just drains me. So totally understand. But what we recently went through as far as with the test, and the schools used to make it to where it had to be a PCR test. And finding those.
What are we, like 4 days out here in our area to even get tested? I feel
but this was like a couple months ago.
Okay.
Where it was, a little bit easier to find these things, but also you got to go and find an appointment and get there and do it. And so recently, with how hard it is to not even just get a rapid test. So now when I had one that was sick and we had this positive test, I emailed the school nurse and I'm like, please tell me you accept these, because I can't stand having not only to go run out and take up another test that someone else could be using, but also to navigate that with children at home.
Because you wanted his days to start. That's why you needed school to...
Well, I wanted to make sure that she would accept that.
As what?
As proof of a positive, because then she's covered for 90 days. Like, this is like the anxiety over as a parent.
Yeah. So it's
because
not
she's
only
not
like,
a vaccinated child.
So it's not only like, hey, my kid has COVID. Let me like literally tamper down my anxiety that has been building for the past 2 years about what happens if you get COVID. Let me not take care of my kid. Like, let me take care of my kid. Let me, relax a little bit into this situation. But let me also let school know so that on the other side of this, if she is exposed in the next 90 days, she can stay in school.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy.
It's like insane to me.
It's like this additional step, which I get, and I understand why it's important, and I understand it. But it's like, how much more, like, literally, can you put on our plates at this point?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, like, I remember I told you, I was like, you should have seen the email I just had to send the nurse, because I literally had to break down by kid, a vaccination status. Were they exposed? Were they not? Were they fully isolated? Were they... affected, when they can return, and all of them were all different. Like they were all different, because one's had it, so she's good to go, and the other one hasn't. Oh, and this one was exposed the week prior, but now the exposure's bumped because she was exposed this day. And the nurse literally just responded with like 3 laughing emojis and was like, "Thank you." Like I so feel for the people in these positions, because I can't even imagine like what she's been through this year.
Because here's the deal. They're not just getting the anxiety, and they're not just getting the anxiety from moms who are calling with sick kids who are suddenly very anxious. Because I don't think that you can read the data. You can read the data doesn't even match itself. You can read what you can on the latest variant. You can decide what you want to decide in terms of how dangerous it is to us vaccinated, boosted kids, whatever. So suddenly you have all of this anxiety and you're interacting with another human being, which is not always the best thing from a health standpoint. But then you're also having to be like kind with this person who is about to tell you that your entire life is going to be locked down for the next 7 to 10 days. And you have no idea, is that person living paycheck to paycheck? Can that person go to work at this point? Do they have childcare options? And that's where like I have to check my privilege all the time, because I get anxiety over this, and like anxiety over having sick kids and like trying to navigate it all. But I don't even have that extra step. I don't even have to worry about, and I would hope that nobody here at Latched Mama feels like they ever have to worry about that. But can you think about all of the hundreds of thousands of families across the nation right now that have to deal with the idea that like they have to figure out how their family perhaps is going to eat and how they're going to get to work because they all suddenly have a sick kid that can't go back to school for 7 to 10 days. And then what do? Do you, I don't know.
I think a lot of parents, they end up having to do what they need to do. I'm sure a lot of kids, and maybe not the super young ones, but I think there's a lot of middle schoolers, even older elementary kids that are fending for themselves at home.
Just like they were 2 years ago. Like we're not in a better place.
Open your laptop and you're responsible for your education today.
Yeah.
Like that's just, for the parents and the children, the young kids out there right now. Because I think that, which was the mama on here who, I forget which one. Oh, more harm than good. Yeah. Just on the little ones. And there are days that I'm just like, these kids are just getting hit so hard.
Where we struggle a little bit
these years
as like a household is the idea that when it first came out, it was so jarring, and it was like, we're going to mask, we're going to stay away, we're going to lock down, friends can't come over, we're staying. And I think we can't lose sight of the fact that that was probably extremely scary for kids. So suddenly COVID, and the word COVID, I know at least in our house, became this very, very, very scary thing. It was a thing that killed grandparents. You know, it was a thing that if your grandparents got it, your grandparents may die. And that was how it was introduced to them. And I mean, maybe not quite as abrasively as I just said, but it was hitting them from all angles.
Because nobody knew.
Nobody knew. Nobody knew if it was on surfaces. Nobody knew if it was in the air. Nobody knew, you know, necessarily what the comorbidities were. Nobody knew how to treat it. Like, it was terrifying. It was terrifying as an adult, let alone as a kid suddenly that couldn't go to soccer practice or couldn't go to swim practice or couldn't see their grandparents. So now we're 2 years in. They're most likely 40 to 50% on the end of this wave will have had it. You somehow have to teach them that, hey, it's the same thing. It has the same word. Yeah, you technically have COVID, but you're not going to die from it, Grandma. Or you're hopefully not going to die from it. You know, like, it's just this complete change that now we have the responsibility as parents, to help them through this with the least amount of emotional damage as possible.
Well, you were. I was on the phone with you, right? When little one came down and she's like, and I don't want to have COVID.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wish that word wasn't even in your vocabulary. Like, it doesn't need to be. And then I was on the phone with my mother-in-law one day and I was just reminding her it was on a really hard day that she was sick. And I said, Mom, like, we're not messing with breathing. Like, you call 911. And then a kid comes in and he's like, who's 911? And I'm like, no, like, just the anxiety around that whole word and all of it is just.
And we're not trying
too
with
much.
This podcast to increase anxiety at all, which I'm sure in some people, hopefully they know themselves enough that they'll stop listening if it gets there. We really just want to talk about it in the sense that, like, you're not alone. Like, it is a very, very hard road to navigate that, I mean, it's the first time. Right. I mean, there's no books. There's nobody really out there trying to tell us or help us right now in terms of how to navigate this thing that, I mean, I think it's probably maybe a good thing in the end that so many people, especially kids, are going to get it and have gotten it in the last few weeks. But at the same time, nobody prepared you at the beginning of the pandemic to speak softly to your children about it. Everybody said, no, the kids are the ones carrying it. The kids are going to be the ones that end up hurting the older people, you know, but suddenly we have to back that down and say, hey, it's okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to get through this. Like, it just... It makes me all like angry and sad at the same time right now because it's not, and then there's no support, you know, and then there's nobody out there talking about it right now and talking about how hard it is. So if you're tired, if you feel like this has been going on forever, if you feel like everybody's ignoring moms again, you're probably right, but we're here and there's a lot of people going through it. Yeah.
And I think for me, it's a reminder, and it's not always easy to do, but I'm like, just take a deep breath and you take the information that's given to you and you just do the best that you can, you know, as a mom.
And you know,
you
your
just
kids.
Try to make a responsible decision. If something's a little off one day, just take a day. Like, maybe you don't send them to school because they say their throat hurts for a day. But like, I don't leap to that big time anxiety where I used to, because all we can do is just do our best. You know, and make the best choices we can as a mom and keep living.
And I 100% agree with that. But I think it also, and where I'm trying to continue to check myself, comes from a little bit of privilege in the sense of, hey, I can stay home with my kid if they have a stuffy nose or whatever. I had somebody on my Instagram feed that I was reading that really hoped in like a backwards way that her daughter's PCR came back positive because that meant she got to use her COVID days to stay at home with her. But instead, it didn't come back positive. So she had to use her normal leave days, and she's a teacher and she's pregnant and she's getting ready to have a baby. So all of the time that she spent that week that she spent at home with her kid because she was scared she had COVID, so she didn't send her back to school, waited for a PCR test to come back. PCR test was negative. All of those days that she stayed at home now come out of her maternity leave for her next kid because the kid didn't have COVID. But she thought she was doing the responsible thing by keeping a kid with a fever, and, you know, then the fever went away. But, you know, you have to go get them a PCR at that point to figure out if they're still carrying COVID. It's all so complicated. And I think that it all comes back to one of our largest missions here, which is literally relook at the way we treat women in the workforce. Like, give them the flexibility to be mothers and to be employees at the same time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just hard. But your
and
kids.
I hope I didn't say the wrong thing, because
No, you didn't.
I also hope that we as women and mothers extend that grace, but have a friend who is single and a child has, a bit of a runny nose, or, I hope they don't I think if it was me, the kid would go to school. I would just
with a negative rapid.
No, just with a runny nose. It's the middle of winter. At some point, I think you have to really look at it. And if you have to be at work and you don't have the ability to stay home with them, that's a decision I would make. If they had multiple symptoms or even a low fever, I think that would be a more responsible thing to keep them out of school.
But I think it also just comes back to what we talked about in the last podcast, is that you don't know what road somebody's walking. You don't know somebody's situation.
So I'm not going to judge anybody else's
you don't know
decisions. I think you do the best that you can right now, and we try to love on each other and support each other if we can.
Absolutely. So the whole point of this podcast was to let you guys know that we see you. We know that it's tough. We know that there's so many decisions to be made every single day for the health of your kids, for your relationships with others, your relationships with extended family and care providers. And it's all super hard, and it's okay to say it's hard. So thanks, guys.